Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. So I'm James Philpott from the European Digital SME Alliance, and we are one of the partners in the CYBERSTAND project. Very briefly, CyberStand is interested in cybersecurity standards. We'll explain a bit more about that later on because today we're taking kind of a bigger picture approach. We're going to be discussing standards and the standards creation process, but with a particular focus on how SMEs can benefit from using standards and also getting involved in the development of the European standards. So to do this, we have three experts from the world of standards and SMEs joining us. So firstly, we have Andrea Raffaelli from the Small Business Standards Organization, and he'll be joining us to discuss how SMEs can benefit from standards and the work that happens to make sure that more SMEs are involved in standards creation. After that, we have Anthony Cento, who is the co-founder and CEO of SD1 Solutions, and he'll be discussing how he's involved in developing standards, why this is of interest to him and his company. And then finally, we have Dario Sabella joining us from NextG Cloud, who will be explaining about how and why he is involved in standards creation, how the CyberStand project has helped him, and how he tries to incorporate SMEs within the standardization process as the chairman of a group within ETSI. So thank you very much for joining us today, Anthony and Andrea. Dario will be online with us later. Before we get started, I'd just like to mention that the meeting is being, or the webinar is being recorded today, and it will be available publicly afterwards. So if there are any questions or discussions that you want to have removed from the public recording, you can get in contact with us and we'll be able to remove those. For questions and answers, after each speaker, we will have a short Q&A session there. And so you can either ask your question in the chat. There's also a dedicated Q&A chat as well. And then if you want to, we can also unmute you and we can have a discussion. So with all that said, I will pass over to Andrea now, and we can begin learning a bit about standards.
All right. Thanks very much to James, to Digital SME Alliance, and to all the CyberStand partners for the opportunities to speak to you here today about SBS, about what we do, who we are, and especially as SMEs, how to get involved in standardization. I'm afraid I'm not allowed to share, so I don't know, James, if you can.
Yes.
Show as a backup, since I don't seem to have the privilege.
I can give you the privilege. 1 second.
Okay.
Try now.
Yes. Just a second. Yeah, I seem to have some issues with this, so if you don't mind, actually.
Yeah. I can share.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
1 second. Okay, it should be.
Thanks, James. Sorry for the mix-up, everyone. Yeah, no. Indeed, as you can see here, what we would like to present today, what I would like to present today is indeed a bit of an overview about SBS, Small Business Standards, who we are, what we do, and particularly how we try and how we want to support participation of SMEs in standardization at European level, which is our primary concern, whenever possible at national level, and particularly, obviously, given the setup and the audience that we have here today, particular attention to cybersecurity, ICT, and digitalization standards. James, if you can, please, next slide. Indeed, again, can go forward here. A little bit of an overview as to why SMEs are crucial to standardization, and reciprocally, why standards are crucial for SMEs. This will be the theme throughout this short talk. Probably you all know the figures, but these are the hard figures about the role of SMEs in European economy. As you can see, 99.8% of businesses, 20 million SMEs, 2/3 of all jobs, almost 60% of the gross value added. That means, on the other hand, that SMEs, as much as we try, they are still underrepresented in standardization. That is why we need a stronger role on the one hand to be granted and to be able to have it from decision makers, policymakers, and from the European Standardization Organization. And on the other hand, on our side, what we can do to indeed boost participation. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of a roundup about us, SBS, who we are. We are the organization defined as an Annex 3, a bit clunkily. That means that essentially in Regulation 1025/2012 on European standardization, we are the organization that is mandated by the legislation, therefore by the EU, to represent the interests of European SMEs in standardization, as I was saying before, primarily at European level, although we are trying more and more to expand more at national level because we see big value added in there. As you can see, the goals are, on the one hand, pretty straightforward. On the other, they can be tricky to achieve at times. But so increasing the awareness as one of the main barriers to participation in standardization is indeed a lack of awareness about the system, how to participate, how to get involved, and what the benefits are. And that is why events like today are particularly important. And then indeed represent the interests of SMEs, both in a general approach and particularly once they are involved in the standardization system. And then a bit more downstream to try and strengthen the use and uptake of standards by SMEs, again, considering the economic benefits that this brings to them. Next, please. And this, in terms of activities, a little bit of a scheme about the three main courses and avenues for action that we pursue. Technical, policy, political, and awareness raising. On the technical side, we will see it in a minute more in detail. Our core activity is to nominate technical experts, SME-based technical experts who essentially are in the meetings where the standards are written. So to really have this hands-on participation and hands-on involvement. We also try to train our experts to an extent and to share their challenges and to share their experiences. We will see it in a minute with working groups or with other let's say internal fora to bring together the experts and to try and act as a positive multiplier to their participation. On the other hand, on the policy side, we interact a lot, obviously, with the European Commission and the policymakers. On the other hand, also with the ESOs, with the European Standards Organization. Apologies for the quantity of acronyms that I am using here, but as you know, the acronym soup in Brussels is a long and proud tradition. Anyway, ESOs, European Standards Organizations, means CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. In CEN and CENELEC, we are observers in the board. We have a dedicated working group for SME standardization policy, while in ETSI, which has a different model, we are directly members, and together with Digital SME Alliance, we have roles such as spots in the board of ETSI and a vice chairmanship of the General Assembly. And what we do on the policy side is what, well, pretty much anyone else in Brussels does. We hope to do it better in a way that is writing policy papers, meeting with decision makers, and really try to bring forward our position vis-a-vis, indeed, the Brussels political process. And then downstream, what we do in terms of awareness raising, events such as this one, publications, we do brochures, we do implementation guides, again, to try and act downstream, as I said before, about the use and implementation of standards. Next, please. And this is, again, talking about the core role of the experts in our activity. That is essentially the reason why we exist, to nominate and finance experts in standardization. As you can see, this calendar year, we have nominated 79 experts covering more than 260 technical bodies in CEN, CENELEC, ETSI, ISO, and IEC. As you can see, it's a wide variety of sector, from obviously cybersecurity and privacy, other areas of ICT and digitalization, but also, let's say, more old industry. So we have experts that are writing AI standards and experts that are writing construction scaffolding standards. So it's really covering the whole spectrum. Next, please. And this is more in detail about the next two slides before we go more in general to the benefits. The digital policy and particularly in cyber, what we do here. We have 25 experts covering 71 technical bodies in ICT and digitalization. We participate in different expert groups, such as the radio equipment expert group and others. And again, as I said before, we focus on the sharing of practices and experiences and mutual support among our experts with our SBS Working Group Digitalization, that also known as the Digital SME Alliance Working Group Standards. It's the two names for the same body. Next, please. And this is specifically with regards to cybersecurity and cybersecurity related standards. We have 10 experts active this year. One of them, Anthony Center, will speak right after me. And he is indeed one of the 4 new cybersecurity related experts that we have added this year. This is the biggest increase that we have had in any sector this year, because we are very, very aware and mindful of how crucial cybersecurity related standardization is becoming. So we are now in most of the working groups within JTC 13. We are, I believe, in 5 working groups within ISO IC SC 27. So we are really trying more and more to expand our participation in this area. And as you can see in the last 2 bullet points, this is something that we try to do every year with a call for expert that we launch over the summer for the following calendar year. So in June, the 2026 call for experts will go out. So obviously everyone here is very much welcome and encouraged to get in touch with us and to put forward their candidature to have more and more experts that are active in ICT, digitalization, and particularly in cybersecurity. Next, please. And this is the point, again, the more general point as to the importance of the standards for SMEs and their benefits. Next, please. This is, again, the different areas of benefits of standards for SMEs. As you can see, there are positive consequences in all areas. And again, the difficulty sometimes is that the system is not so well known, perhaps, or it's considered complicated or a little bit too complex to approach. And indeed, there are some inbuilt difficulties in the system, and that is why associations like ours exist to try and bridge this gap and try to help out and really communicate the economic benefits of standards. Standards can have many benefits, but for us as SMEs, we really have to focus on their economic benefits to really make the business case for standards and for standardization. As you can see, there is a thread that goes throughout, that is the interoperability that is granted by a well-crafted standard. And to have a well-crafted standard that works for SMEs, we need to have SMEs experts. So that is why, going back to my previous point, we really hope to see you applying more and more for financing and for participation as SBS experts. As you can see, obviously, there is benefits in terms of the production processes, of economies of scale, of the fact that there are more potential suppliers and potentially more vendors that you can interact with if you are, for instance, a software company that is more downstream. But then again, showing compliance with standards means that you will have more consumer trust. It means that you can access more markets. It means that essentially, particularly when it comes to harmonized standards, that is a subset of standards that is in support of EU legislation, If you comply, you have the so-called presumption of conformity, which means if you go and say, I comply with harmonized standards EN XYZ, you are considered as complying with the relevant legislation. So you have much less costs in terms of proving the compliance of your product, and you have a more streamlined and less costly access to market. Next, please. And this is, again, the importance of the SME involvement. At European level, we try to do it, as I said before, as SBS, but we really see a lot of value, and we try more and more to push in this direction to participation in standardization at the national level. This is for a very clear, simple reason. In the standardization system is national delegations that vote on standards. Is, I don't know, UNI in Italy, DIN in Germany, AFNO in France. If you participate in standardization at the national level, you can influence those national positions. It means that you have an impact on the positions that those countries and the voting stances that those countries have, not only at national level, but also at European and international. So we very much encourage you to reach out to us and participate at the European level via SBS, but we very much encourage you to reach out to your national standards body and get involved at the national level, because the amount of positive impact that you can make at that level and reflect at all levels of the process is very underrated, and it's something that we are only recently trying to tap into more. Next, please. And this is, on the other hand, is the other side of the coin. What are the challenges? What are the difficulties? Again, as I was already saying before, the awareness, but then also the resources, not only money, but time. For someone who runs an SME, having to dedicate time to participate in standardization meetings, which means sometimes half a day each week or half a day every couple of weeks, is very time sensitive and time consuming. So we do understand that the resources are a barrier, and that is why associations like us, associations like Digital SME Alliance, can really act as multipliers and has pooling of resources to have more experts participating and perhaps sharing your positions, and considering that even if you cannot participate directly in the standards development process, you can still participate with your input. And someone else from associations like ours will be in the room and will put those comments on paper. And then downstream, perhaps at the very last point, one of the difficulties that we try to work on with monitoring, with implementation guides, is how to identify which standards matter and how then to implement them. For instance, we have an implementation guide for ISO 27001. We will have one once the harmonized standards on AI are produced. We will produce one, most likely in 2026, given the timeline. Similarly, on the horizontal standards that will come out in support of the CRA within 12 to 18 months, we will make guides for implementation about that. So really to try and impact both in being in the room in terms of writing the standards, and then downstreams in terms of helping with use and implementation. So next, but I think this was the last one, if I'm not mistaken, indeed. And apologies if I've gone a bit long, but obviously I'm at your disposal for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Really interesting. And I think you touched on quite a lot there. So thank you for actually keeping it short, because I imagine there would be a lot more that you could mention there. Just to check, I don't see any questions so far in the Q&A panel. I don't know if anyone wants to write some in the chat or just open their mic and ask. But in the meantime, if we wait for people to do that, I have a couple of questions following this. So just like to ask, what's the process to join SBS? How would someone that's interested in standards, wants to learn a bit more and how to get involved, where would they begin?
Yeah, indeed, in terms of direct participation as experts, as I said before, we have a call that we put out every year in the summer to participate for the following calendar year. The requisites for that for participation to the call and to be eligible for the call are very broad. Actually, it's not necessary to be European national. You just have to have your primary place of business in the EU. And the only real requirement is that you carry forward a SME-friendly position. So to ascertain that, we ask that each candidate expert receives the sponsorship of an SME association, SME organization that is active in the relevant field. For instance, Digital SME Alliance sponsors, I think, about 12 to 15 of our experts in the ICT and digitalization sector. So by all means, you can reach out to Digital SME Alliance to obtain your letter of support. And obviously, there is a level of vetting to an extent of those SME positions, but obviously via speaking with you, where there is one-to-one guidance and interviews, or participation in the webinar that we do every year to publicize the call. I mean, we get to know if you are going to have SME friendly positions or not. I think most of the people here around this virtual table would qualify for that. So that's why we really want to encourage you to join and to participate.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like a good opportunity there. I think now, first of all, we can say hello to Daria. So thanks for joining us, Daria. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
And then we can move on to Anthony. So Anthony, as I said, is CEO and co-founder of SD1 Solutions, is involved in standards in a lot of different ways. So I'll let him explain how this happens, just to make sure you can see the screen. And I think they're ready to go. Although, Anthony, I think you're muted. So.
Did we start again? Thank you very much, James. Is that good?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, and thank you, Andrea, for setting up the stage so well. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just want to share my thoughts on standards and the impact for SMEs. So standards are often perceived as complex and resource intensive, particularly when it comes to SMEs. However, they are also very powerful tools that can drive growth, innovation, and competitiveness. As the CEO of SD1 Solutions, a specialist network and security company, I've experienced firsthand how embracing the standards can transform an SME's trajectory. And today I'm going to share some insights on why standards matter, how SMEs can engage in the processes, and also the benefits of active participation. I'll try not to repeat what Andrea said, but if I do, it's only because we're hammering them home. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's start with the challenges. For many SMEs, standards can feel like an overwhelming maze. There's technical jargon, lengthy documents, and the high cost of implementation. As an example, in our industry, adopting network security standards like cryptography frameworks requires significant time, expertise, not to mention the 1,700 pages of text that I have to read through. But for any small business that can see with limited resource, this can seem insurmountable. But you wouldn't be no one will blame you if you're thinking that standards really aren't meant for SMEs. Next slide, please. But that's where you're actually wrong. Standards, we use standards every single day, and no, this slide isn't a mistake. It's just to highlight that perhaps one of the simplest standards we have is size. Imagine if I had no idea what size this slide should be. Or moving on a little bit, what about the A4 paper standard? The size of a piece of paper. Can you imagine what would happen if we didn't know how big an A4 size or normal piece of paper would be? It's a standard. You probably use it every day. It's implemented and you are compliant. Next slide, please, James. Sorry, and the next one. So standards can be very complex for SMEs due to several interrelated challenges, including technical intricacies, resource limitations, and a lack of awareness or accessibility. And these complexities often hinder SMEs from fully leveraging the benefits of standards, despite their potential to drive growth and competitiveness. So what are these complexities actually? So the sheer number of standards across the industries and their highly technical nature can overwhelm SMEs. For instance, Sustainability reporting standards may involve granular requirements that demand expertise in data collection, analysis, and reporting, resources that many SMEs simply don't have. And SMEs often operate with very limited financial and human resources. Implementing standards may require specialist staff, training, or infrastructure investments, like ISO 27001 for information security. It involves both upfront costs and ongoing compliance efforts. Many SMEs are also unaware of the existence or the importance of standards, and even when they are aware, they may not fully understand how to navigate standardization processes or how to identify the standards which are relevant for their businesses. An increasing number of regulations and overlapping requirements adds complexity for SMEs attempting to stay compliant while managing the day-to-day operation of their business. This is particularly evident in industries like finance or sustainability, where new frameworks frequently emerge. And then, as Andrea said also, SMEs rarely participate in the creation of standards due to a lack of representation or a simple lack of understanding of how to engage. This results in standards that may not fully reflect the needs and the realities of smaller businesses. Next slide, please, James. So SMEs can actually start implementing standards by following a structured approach that ensures clarity, alignment with business goals, and effective execution. And here's some very easy steps to follow. Firstly, evaluate which standards actually apply to your industry, to your geographic location, and to your business operations. For example, SMEs handling personal data may need to comply with GDPR or ISO 27001 for data security. Resources like SEN and Senelec's SME Help Desk can provide free advice and guidance on this. Then conduct an internal audit or just fully investigate to identify the gaps between your current processes and where the requirements are of the chosen standard. This helps to determine areas for improvement and sets a foundation for compliance. Set yourselves clear goals for adopting standards, such as improving product quality or enhancing cybersecurity or accessing new markets. Align these objectives with your company mission and long-term strategy. And the average SME across Europe has 6 people. So involving employees, suppliers, and other stakeholders in the implementation process is relatively easy. Their input ensures that the transition is smooth and that everyone understands the importance of compliance and why you're doing it. Then create detailed policies that reflect the requirements of the standards being implemented, and dedicate appropriate resources, including budget, time, personnel, and tools to support the implementation. Assign a team or just an individual to oversee the compliance and monitor the progress. And of course, you can seek expert support by collaborating with national standards bodies or organizations like SBS or Digital SME for training, mentoring, and financial assistance. These entities really help SMEs navigate the complexities and to participate in the standardization process. And don't forget to monitor and improve standards as time goes by. Most importantly, remember that adopting even a single standard can significantly boost your operational efficiency and the marketability of your company. Next slide, please, James. So SMEs can leverage standards to enhance their competitive edge by improving efficiency, ensuring quality, assessing new markets, fostering innovation, and reducing risks. And here's how. So standards provide very clear guidelines for best practices in processes, products, and services. By adopting them, SMEs can streamline operations, eliminate inefficiencies, and ensure consistent quality. By adopting European standards, adopting EU standards allowed us as a business to develop our own hardware and have it manufactured exclusively for us, knowing it's fully compliant all across the EU, and hence also across Africa and Asia Pac, where EU standards are generally accepted due to that high standard. Anyway, the world today is a very different place than it was even a few months ago, particularly for Europe, where the focus is looking at homegrown solutions in all industries and products. Buy European is becoming a thing, and EU SMEs are ideally placed to take full advantage of the swing away from traditional suppliers. Standards act as a passport to global markets. By complying with internationally recognized benchmarks, you as an SME can demonstrate reliability and compatibility, making it easy to export products or to bid for government contracts. Standards create a framework for compatibility and integration with existing systems, enable us SMEs to innovate within established parameters. This fosters the development of new products and services that meet market demands while adhering to regulatory requirements. Personally, we've been able to fully integrate military-grade data encryption technologies into our solution and devices by complying with the EU standards and by using third-party services that are compliant also. A huge benefit to us, to our customers, a huge head start over even some of the biggest security vendors globally. By following the standards, SMEs can mitigate the risks associated with non-compliance, production errors, or customer dissatisfaction. Standards provide a safety net of proven practices that reduces uncertainty in operation. And engaging in the standardization process allows you as an SME to shape the guidelines that reflect your needs. Organizations like SBS advocate for SME involvement to ensure inclusivity and relevance. Through SBS, our company, SD-WAN Solutions, has participated in the cryptography standards development to ensure the practical frameworks of cybersecurity that benefit smaller enterprises just like ours. Next slide, please, James. So that leads me on to why I got involved in standards. So I chose to get involved with SBS because I believe that SMEs need a seat at the table when these frameworks are created. When I applied to become an expert in the cryptography standards workgroup, it was driven by a desire to ensure that the voices of the smaller enterprises, like you, like me, like ours, are all heard. Too many huge corporations are active in standard boards, and since 99% of businesses across Europe are SMEs, we need representation. Being part of this process benefits our company too. It allows us to influence industry direction. It ensures that we're prepared for upcoming changes in compliance requirements. It's positioned us as a thought leader in our industry, and it's enhanced our credibility with clients and partners while giving us early insights into upcoming changes that allow us to innovate proactively. Next slide, please, James. And SMEs can engage with European standard organizations like CEN, CENELEC, ETSI through several structured pathways, and that also allows you to contribute, benefit from the standards, and ensures that your needs are represented. So ask the Digital SME Alliance for help and introductions, and SMEs can also engage through small business standards by applying to become SME experts in technical committees or working groups of CEN, CENELEC, ETSI, ISO, for example. SBS annually publishes calls for experts and provides financial compensation for the participation. But unlike CEN and CENELEC, ETSI allows SMEs to become direct members without requiring representation. This enables SMEs to actively participate in drafting standards relevant to ICT applications and services. CEN CENELEC also has an SME help desk that provides free advice, training, mentoring, and rapid email responses to help SMEs understand and access the European standard system, as well as providing an SME toolbox of solutions, which is a one-stop service point offering guidance on how SMEs can engage with standardization processes. You can also engage at a national level through national standard bodies, which often have dedicated seats or advisory committees for SME representatives. And then, as Andrea mentioned again, webinars are often hosted by SBS or ETSI to introduce SMEs to standardization. Again, the benefits of engagements: you influence the standards development, you can access financial support through SBS, and you gain a competitive advantage through your active involvement. Last slide, please, James. So, as a cryptography expert for CEN CENELEC via SBS, my job is to raise awareness on the issues that may be of importance to SMEs in the development of standards and to overcome the possible non-representation of SMEs in standardization work. This enables SMEs to be trusted. So standards help SMEs build trust with customers, partners, and stakeholders by demonstrating compliance with recognized benchmarks. This credibility is crucial for smaller businesses like mine to compete in international markets. It allows us to be innovative. By engaging in the standardization process, SMEs can stay ahead of industry trends, integrate cutting-edge practices, and develop innovative solutions. Participation also enhances the technical competence of the teams, allowing us to be efficient. Standards streamline processes, reduce waste, and improve operational efficiency, leading to cost savings. They also help avoid costly errors by providing clear guidelines for production and service delivery, allowing us to be involved. Our involvement in standardization and your possible involvement in standardization fosters collaboration with other businesses, industry leaders, and technical experts. This networking can lead to partnerships, knowledge sharing, and increased visibility within the industry, allowing us to be secured. So SMEs have often used standards to address critical issues like data sovereignty by implementing secure systems to comply with local regulations. This is especially relevant for sectors in IT and cybersecurity, or anyone trading at the moment. It's not a case of if you will be cyber attacked, it's when you will be cyber attacked, and it's best to be ready for that. And finally, this allows us to be proud. So most SMEs report that participating in standardization is not only professionally rewarding, but it's also enjoyable, and it fosters a sense of pride due to your contribution to industry progress and to the EU as a whole. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I think that's a very nice message to finish on. I don't see any questions in the Q&A or the chat at the moment, but I actually have a couple. So would you say, well, firstly, Andrea mentioned that this year they've recruited more cybersecurity experts than ever before.
Yep.
Would you say through the time that you've been participating, do you think that there's more of an awareness of kind of needing to be adapting standards for SMEs or making them more SME friendly? Do you think there's more of an awareness of this in the standards creation process, or there's still quite a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that these messages are kind of taken on board by everybody in the process? And if there isn't an SME there, say,
Yep.
they won't be considered.
Okay, I'm going to answer this in two parts. First of all, I'm one of the shiny new experts this year, so everything was brand new to me. I walked into a room full of experts, not knowing what to expect, and loads of acronyms, as Andrea said. But after the introduction, everything became quite clear. Lovely bunch of people. Everyone's just looking out for the best interests of the EU, of their businesses, etc. As an SME, we're only scratching the surface. Yeah. So in my particular group in cryptography, I am the only SME representation in that, and everyone else belongs to huge, massive corporations. Yeah, that dominate the security or cryptography industry. I'm not saying they're all bad, but they obviously have their own interests at heart, and we absolutely need more SMEs to get involved. I know it's time constraints, but you know what? Giving up an hour a day, a month, for example, just as an example, it's really worth it for the benefits that you do get, and you do actually, you have a voice, you are able to change the way that things are for the SMEs, for yourself, etc. Hope that answered that.
Yes, it did. Thank you. I have another question that I hope that makes sense. But you said you now build your hardware to a standard, and actually this standard was created with your hardware in mind. Is that right?
No, so it made us so much easier to develop the specific hardware that we needed, because all we had to do was make sure that it complied with existing standards, and we can actually have the hardware manufactured outside of the EU. But we know fully that it is compliant because of the standards that are in place against it, if that answers that. Yeah. So it really made the certification and testing so much simpler, because we had it designed and manufactured according to set standards.
So you were aware of this standard before you began the product design phase? You already knew it, or because it's just kind of curious how it can be incorporated into almost, the product design cycle.
I'm the ideas guy. I jumped in the deep end when it came to the standards. I learned an awful lot very quickly, but it saved us, I would probably say, years of development by being able to look at the standards and follow the guidelines to the standards as to what we needed to do.
Okay, so that's a pretty tangible benefit right there.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Anthony. I think we've got to move on to Dario now. So just say thank you once again and stop sharing my screen. And Dario, over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, James. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure also to be here with other speakers in this webinar. And I'm sorry I did not prepare any slides for that, but I plan to contribute orally by talking about this topic. I'm quite interested. And by the way, let me clarify first of all, I'm totally agreeing and I like it a lot, the presentation of the past speakers from Andrea, from Anthony. If I can say with the standardization jargons, I co-sign everything they said. Okay, so and really I like it also the intentions and let's say the willingness to contribute on standards. It's a very much important problem about involving SMEs. Let me start with my perspective. Also, let me present first of all myself. I'm here in my, let's say, personal capacity of expert, but also I am holding many hats. I'm currently serving as a vice president of Explore Research, leading a team on technology and standards. So I feel myself very much involved in the topic. Also, I have a double appointment as a managing director of it's an SME based in Italy for growing the European market. I'm focusing also on cybersecurity, on cloud and standardization. And I'm having also the role of a chairman of a standard body in ETSI, which is a group called MEC, Multi-Access Edge Computing. And to my pleasure, actually, this group was growing a lot in the years when I was starting being chairman, and we were like 120 between members and participants. Now I can just see gradually in the growth. We are arriving above 190. 190, more than that. I cannot count that. So it's not just because it's me. I'm a best looking chairman. I don't know. I'm not that young anymore. It's not because of me, because maybe the edge computing market is growing. But I can tell you, I also have an experience. Why I'm mentioning this, not just because I don't need to do advertisement, of course, of this work. If this is successful group, it's not because of me, because maybe there is an interest and companies are attending and participating and contributing actively. Now the problem is inclusion of smaller companies, how we can facilitate the process and ensure that the standards are also fed by smaller voices, let's say. So needless to say, don't have to repeat. Andrea and Anthony very well, excellently explained the opportunities for an SME and the impact that they can have, but also the issues they are facing. In my career, also, I was working from big companies and global corporations and SMEs and startups. So I've seen all the sizes. So I'm not biased on that. I'm really talking about, let's say, as an engineer, as an expert on the industry, what I see. Of course, there are opportunities and also issues for smaller companies, which the issues also include costs and awareness of what they can do, and sometimes also it's hard to find the competence, and the delegator is a very particular job profile. So it's if done let's say properly, can be full-time job, and I know that in some standard bodies it's very tough. For example, in 3GPP there are groups for the mobile connectivity design and the communication networks. If you attend a group, there are hundreds of contributions. You have to really to focus on a small niche to do things properly, and even you can fail doing things properly because the amount of work can be a lot, and then you have really to focus. right? So that can be, and also the way contributing, including process and things like needs proper education. It's really a job. It needs years. So finding the right competence, it's not easy, especially in a smaller organization. Then you have to focus a lot on what you care about for your business. That's okay. Then the point is how to find the best place for you to ensure that you have the maximum impact, and finding let's say a standard group which is also allowing you to do so, right? I can just put the example from my experience of Etsy. Again, it's not advertisement, it's just what I know better because I'm also involved there. This is a huge organization, more than I believe almost 1,000, more than 900 members at least globally. But also, if you look at the statistics, 23% are SMEs and smaller companies. So it's not that bad. And I can tell you that there are two kind of groups. If you look at the organization, there are the technical committees and the industry specification groups, so TC and ISG. While in the TC, to enter this group, you need to be Etsy member and pay the membership fee. For an ISG, actually, you don't need to be Etsy member. You just sign the participant agreement at the bare minimum, and you are there for free, and you can have global impact. So in this case, cost is not an issue. Maybe nobody knows that, but this is also an opportunity that people maybe tend to not being aware of that. I can tell you, not because, again, Mac is an ISG, Mac is a lot of membership there. Also, smaller company can join and sign participant agreement and don't have a membership fee to pay. But of course, they have to put resources. This is a cost. Resources means time spent. If you spend time to contribute on the standard, maybe you have less time to do other business. It's also, of course, cost. You have to spend resources in any case. So, but the point is, really, the standard should be populated by companies that are bringing their products and solutions, working solutions based on their experience from the market to the standard, not vice versa. So really, having also an SME, a small company, doesn't necessarily mean that the solution is not worth to be standardized. The process of a standardization should be inclusive and open and transparent for that, and allow also smaller companies to contribute and have an impact and propose a standard. And then when we go, I can tell with my hat of chair, when you go in the standard committee and the meeting, the chairman should interpret the consensus between the various positions. Consensus does not mean necessarily unanimity, of course, but there should be some discussion. This should be fair, independently on the sides of the company which is proposing some solution. So that should be reasonable. There can be discussions, and then if an agreement is reached, then the standard is there, and the company can have an impact. Of course, having maybe some strategies for the companies to join together, join forces, co-sign a contribution. Sometimes co-signing a contribution is a tool for the chairman to interpret if there is a consensus already. So if something is agreeable, and this is really appreciated when it can facilitate the discussion in a standard body, the actual discussion when we are deciding a contribution X, Y, Z for a certain standard specification. So as I said, access rule to enter a standard body, cost, and also rules to attend and contribute. Problem is, if I can say sometimes, is also not just about the opportunity to enter a standard body, but having the awareness and learning how the work is done, how you can contribute, what is the process. So for that, there are also, I believe, another issue is also sort of education. Increasing the awareness of this standard process is also critical, because it can be an obstacle. If you don't know how things are working, you tend to think, oh, no, they are rejecting my standard only because I'm a small company. No, sometimes it's not that. I can really trust me. Sometimes it's really because the standard is written in such a way that there are rules, and every single word is important. If it's a can or it's a shell, it's a different word, and it's something is mandatory or optional feature in a standard. So everything should be very carefully tailored and carefully designed when we write a standard. It's a very much complex work, so that's why maybe sometimes there is a sort of barrier at the entrance due to the complexity. Of course, it's not just about your work, your technical feature that you want to bring there. You have to also comply with the drafting rules, the process, and this is also in need of some, let's say, resilience. If you are really convinced about what you want to do, then you have to understand that there are some timings. Unfortunately, here, and not here, of course, to defend the standardization. Unfortunately, sometimes the standardization process, we have to say the truth, is slow. But this can be something mismatching with the need of the company, whatever is a small or big company. Sometimes they have a need to rush. They have to go to market. They have no time to standardize. They don't have this patience to see this in the standard. I want to see products and make money and maybe satisfy my customers, and then maybe, I don't know, later on, tomorrow, I will think about standardization. I can understand sometimes this is a reasoning happening, but I can tell if you care about. So the point is, for me, and I don't want to be too long. Please, James, interrupt me. I'm very passionate about this topic. But the point for me is, as a standard guy, I don't want to do advertisement of the standardization. For me, to be honest, we have to ask ourselves when a standardization action is needed. It's because it's an endeavor, right? I have to put effort on that. So I have to evaluate cost and opportunities. So when a standardization action is needed? And the answer is, for me, whenever interoperability is critical for you to offer end-to-end a service to your customers. Because if you want to, for example, I give you the example of the edge computing and cloud computing and what we do in the standard in Mac and the APIs and so on and so forth. So if you have something that needs of defining like a protocol between two entities, that they have to dialogue to each other and they cannot interoperate otherwise, then you need a standard talking the same language universally. Right? Because this is interoperability issue. This is critical. Instead, if you want to, let's say, define how a product inside is done, do you really need a standard? No, because it's just a black box, let's say a closed box, okay? And you don't need to define how inside a product is done because it's your stuff. Instead, if the product is composed by parts coming from two stakeholders, two guys that have to communicate with each other, then you have again an interoperability issue. And then you may need a standard. You may need, in terms of, you may decide if you want to put a standard, and then if you reach a consensus, then you create a standard. But the standard is genuinely needed when there is an interoperability need, and maybe also, for example, I can tell you in the standard groups, often there is also an activity dually on testing for interoperability and compliance test, which is different from for certification. It's another story. If you want to certify some compliance, it's a second step. I'm just talking about compliance with the standard should be tested against the interoperability. So product XYZ and all the matrix of, let's say, correspondence between different solutions. And then maybe things can be working and the customers are satisfied. Why? Because you use the standard for a tool needed by the market, right? So it's an effort. Yes, there are issues, but also there are some opportunities that can be exploited. It's not a perfect world. I'm very much aware of that. And sometimes, if I can say also as a self-criticism, sometimes the standard is very slow, but technology is also helping us. I can tell you just as a very small hint, we are evaluating usage of AI to automate some test procedures and to create the open API representation starting from the standard PDF file. So Gen AI can sometimes be helpful, and automation. Well, of course, it's an investment again, but also in Etsy, for example, there are activities trying to, let's say, facilitate these procedures and automate what is not maybe needed by humans necessarily. But again, maybe also some open source communities which are not part of the standard can equally feed respectably the market, not necessarily going to the standardization process. When it comes to a product which is mature, then it's okay to evaluate the standardization. So because it's an endeavor, it's good to evaluate costs against the opportunities. So this is just my take. I don't know if it was too long, but if there are questions.
No, it's good. Thank you, Dario. I just wanted to ask you about your involvement with CYBERSTAND, but first I will explain a little bit what CYBERSTAND is. So CYBERSTAND is an EU project that is funded to fund expert involvement in the standardization process for the Cyber Resilience Act. So this is a specific piece of legislation that governs the cybersecurity of connected devices and software. So essentially anything that's connected to the internet now will have a minimal set of cybersecurity requirements. There is a standardization process underway to create the standards to support this, and CYBERSTAND is helping experts join this process. So this is essentially, at the most basic level, funding participation in the working groups at Etsy and Sensenelec that have been mentioned, but also helping on board to these working groups. So if you are new to the process, we can also support you do this. We do have an open funding process at the moment, so you can apply, you can take your idea and submit your application, and we're able to help you do that as well. So this shuts next Friday, Friday the 11th. And what we do is we take these experts, of which Dario is one, and introduce them or make sure that they know who to speak to in Etsy and Sensenelec, and then they can begin working on the standardization process. So I just wanted to ask Dario quickly if you could explain how you're involved with CYBERSTAND and what it's helping you do with the CRA standardization.
No, thank you, James. I recognize, of course, what I said so far was more generically on the standardization as such, but can be also applicable to cybersecurity, which is actually the main topic of my interest since, I would say, 2021, and where we are kind of working on the edge cloud and cybersecurity aspects related to virtualized environment, from infrastructure up to the virtualization layer and up to the application layer. So we have recognized that there are some gaps, and also this is a complex work. That's why I've said, as I said, we started 2021 and still we have a lot of work in front of us. Long story short, I'm involved in Etsy Mac, but also plan to attend possibly Cyber and in TC Cyber in Etsy, and also because my main expertise is more on the Etsy side, but also I'm observer in JTC 13 for the working group 2, 3, and 9 as a Mac chairman. So I plan to better understand what can be properly done, let's say, in alignment between the three bodies. So between Etsy and Sensenelec, and within Etsy, what can be done by the various groups. So it's not just all depending on me, of course, but I try to understand what for the part of the work that I can contribute on, which is the best place I could coherently provide my contribution. So that's why I'm, let's say, involved in this activity, also to give the opportunity to my colleagues in Italy, based in Italy, for getting more aware about the standardization process, and hopefully give them some opportunity to join and contribute gradually, because as I said, this is really a job that needs to be, let's say, people need to be educated, and this needs time and patience. And also the problem is quite complex. There are different regulations now, and also pressure in front of us for the new regulation coming up. So it's a long process as well for the ETSI to organize and coordinate also with SEN and SENELEC. So it's a quite good, but we are here to serve the industry. So this is our aim.
Okay, thank you very much, Dario. And thank you, Andrea Ranti, as well. I don't see any more questions coming from the floor, so I think we can say goodbye for today. So thanks a lot for joining us. I put the info in the chat about the funding opportunity. So just thank you once again to the experts today, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.